What's up, Teen Talk fam? It's your host, So Shy, here with.
Your boy DJ Data in the building.
Miss KK?
KJ.
Your boy Deshaun B.
And it's Donnie.
Joining us right now is Dinisha Mingo, the CEO and Director of MHS Behavioral Services, where she and her team provide quality mental health services to a high needs population. Welcome to the show, Dinisha.
Thanks for having me.
Today, we are discussing issues and opinions surrounding privileged Black children. In earlier segments, we gave our opinions, but we're glad we have a professional joining us right now. We've been going back and forth about spoiled versus well taken care of children. In your opinion, what's the difference between the two?
Well, when you think of the term spoil, you think rotten, right? No good.
Right.
And so I know for many of us in the Black community, if we come from more impoverished communities, then we look at someone who could be well taken care of as spoiled, but that's not necessarily the case, and we want to get out of that mindset. So I would just say a well taken care of child, regardless of finances, is one who has proper discipline, structure, available parents, and access to, education, opportunity, healthcare. Spoiled, well, I think it can be a little bit rotten.
Right. And that's what we had a conversation earlier in the show about spoiled kids. Spoiled kids are rotten. They expect everything. They cannot be told no.
They may have some sense of entitlement and have difficulty, right? Yeah, being told no.
What's the definition? I'm sorry, excuse me. When you hear the phrase privileged Black children, what is the first thing that comes to mind?
Well, finances, good, higher socioeconomic status, and I would say access. And I don't think privilege always has to be a bad thing, but when I would say privilege, I would say access to things that probably most general population will not have access to. So that's finances, like I said, as well as healthcare and educational opportunities.
How much of the behavior of the spoiled child is the parent's fault?
Probably this is not research based from empirical or a research facility, but in my experience working in behavioral health, we attribute probably, I could say easily 90, if not more % of a child's behavior to the parenting in an environment.
What about privileged child? How much of the privileged child is a parent's fault?
Well, let's look at some operational definitions. And are we saying that privilege and spoiled are the same thing?
No, spoiled and privileged are two different.
So when we were talking about privilege, we were just saying access to a lot of things. I would say, I wouldn't say fault, but attributed to parents, again, the majority of it. I also think that based on whether it's natural capabilities or skills that a child has, they can create some of that privilege for themselves. So to give you an example, I grew up in North Las Vegas. I'm from Vegas, a native. My mom, we definitely were poor. I didn't necessarily feel poor. I would say we were well taken care of in the sense that we have food and clothing and shelter. And my mama didn't play, so we had structure as well. But we did not have a lot of money, and I didn't have a lot of access to just do things outside of school, but I did well academically. And so I think because of and I learned from my academics that I got privileges. So field trips, things like that I always got because I was on the honor roll. And so I utilized that to my advantage. And I do think it offered me some privileges that my peers didn't have, just because I was in certain environments, certain classrooms, and I was also, viewed differently because of my behavior and my academics. And so genetically, maybe I had some natural abilities, but I also chose to use that to my advantage because I know that otherwise I would not be able to do some of the other things. So in spite of having a difficult household, I still made that privilege for myself.
Okay. You mentioned structure. What does that mean?
Structure, organization, rules, timely, time management. So again, just to give you a better idea, having proper bedtime, having proper wake up time, having follow through on consequences, expectations in the household, consequences if you don't follow whatever expectations are, and then following through on that. That's what I would think of structure as. And
Okay.
knowing what's coming, right? Kids need
Right.
structure in their environment, and when we have uncertainty, especially whether that's a parent who's never there and you don't know what's going to happen, or maybe they're plagued with addictions or other issues, then that leaves uncertainty, which can lead to anxiety and stress.
Okay. Yes. And wow, that's amazing. I have some friends that don't necessarily have structure, everything that you were saying, but I have structure in my household. But the whole waking up and going to bed thing, I used to have it as a kid, not so much now, but I still do well academically, and I still do well overall as a person. So I think that something kind of just go with the household. Data, you have a question?
Yes, I wanted to know. So, how important is self discipline? We mentioned like everything is basically the parents' fault, but what about the person individually? Like, how important is it for that person to want to dedicate themselves to do better for themselves?
It's extremely important, and I don't like to use the word fault because no parent is perfect, but we want to say is attributed to that household environment. It's attributed to expectations that's set and foundational principles. So like so you said that you had a lot of structure as a child, but now you may not go to sleep at the same time, but you do well. So because you have structure, I always tell people to operate flexibly within structure. You had a foundation that was set, and now you have learned to manage that with what it looks like for you. But maybe because you had a solid foundation, you know how to put in what works for you. Um, but self-discipline is critical, right? You can't get yourself out of any situation if you don't choose to. I still think the way a person develops self discipline often does come from their environment. So, did your parents give you the opportunity to cultivate self discipline? Did they demonstrate that and model it within themselves? And it's not a one size fit all, because I feel like if you don't have an example of how to be, you have one of how not to be. So, using myself again, I love my family, love my mom, but I didn't have a lot of examples of things that I wanted to be like. So I was very motivated to not be in that situation as an adult. So I was like, listen, I'm doing something different. But I also saw I got a reward from it. And again, you can have probably what we may deem as the most perfect household, and a child for whatever reason may just lack that motivation. But being a behavioral specialist, I do believe that there are ways to foster that, and the best things we can do is figure out what's going to be motivating and how you can help that child develop their own sense of motivation and self-discipline relative to them, right? Your level of discipline and motivation may not be the same as the next child's, and it doesn't mean that just because they're not super overachieving that they don't have discipline. It's finding what works for them. And another thing is that's why a support system is important, because parents cannot do it all. But if you have teachers, if you have aunts and uncles, if you have mentors, if you have therapists, then we can all kind of come together and help, find what's going to be best fitting for that person.
Right. Okay. That was so much.
Am I giving y'all too much?
No, you're giving us enough. That's enough. At what age is it too late to spoil kids?
At what age is it too late to now? So that's why when you asked me for the definition of spoiled, I kind of brought up rotten, because I don't know. Some people say I'm spoiled, and I'm like, I'm not spoiled. Do I like to have my way? Yeah, but I create my way. But how does that show up in my relationship sometimes, right? It can be intimidating. So when you say too late to spoil, I don't know if it's ever too late, but you want to be mindful of doing it too early, because again, going back to a principle that you set, a teaching, a foundation is where that child's going to develop their behaviors, their thoughts, and their thinking patterns. And I don't think it's a bad thing to give your children a good lifestyle and a good upbringing. You just want to make sure you couple that with expectations and consequences, because otherwise you breed a person who doesn't have that discipline, who feels entitled, and who may not have a certain kind of work ethic if things are not given to them, and then they do struggle. It can be enabling, and then it may be more detrimental to their own drive later in life, and the way they're employable, the way they have interactions and relationships with other people. But, you know, rewards are good. I'm never going to say to not reward your child or, you know, even your teenager, and give them, you know, a worthy rewards based on their merits, or just doing nice things. It's not a bad thing, but too much of anything, right? Is
Right.
So our litmus test is this gonna cause more harm than good based on their perception of it?
Okay, nice. Deshaun, you had a question?
Hmm. Yes, Miss Dinisha, in what ways have your upbringing really impacted your life?
It made me really tough. I was the oldest of 6 kids. My mom raised um 5 of my cousins, and then I have a brother and sister who came a little bit later. Um, and so it made me very responsible. And there were times where I was like, man, this ain't fair. That's not okay. As an adult, well, I still wouldn't recommend that completely, because I probably had a lot more responsibilities than I should have had. But seeing where I am at my young age compared to many of my peers, I'm thankful for what I have, and I'm a woman of faith, so I know that God is working things out for my good, and this was my path and journey.
I love the answer.
Miss
Thank
KK,
y'all.
had a question?
Yeah, I just had a question because to me this is a very big hot topic, and I feel like a lot of people have differing opinions on me on this topic. So I wanted to ask you, in your opinion, why do you think Black parents or guardians kind of make it a mission to teach their kids how to struggle, whereas white parents aren't too, like, they don't really consider like giving their kids like an extra bit of help? Is it a culture based thing, or is it just an individual thing with each parent?
I think it's definitely culture. Um, and I don't, I'm not extremely versed on the culture in Africa, but I do have
Yeah.
quite a few friends who are from.
Uh-oh.
I'm sorry, can you guys?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're very disciplined as well. So I don't doubt some of that culture is brought over here, but specifically being Black people in America, we have had to struggle. And so your parents teach you what they know. And if they feel like this is going to make you stronger, or this is going to make you resilient, and they're also preparing you for the world around you. And living in America, being Black in America is not an easy world. So I
Yeah.
think that they're giving what they have, and it's a cultural thing and a generational culture thing of our experience, you know, in this country, and us just being like hard workers, and wanting to build strong, resilient, disciplined people. Sometimes that can be problematic because then we don't have the means and support that we need. And again, I think that goes to like
Yeah.
what we don't have. So they're giving you what they do have, but it's not coupled also always with the financial support that other
Right.
may
Well, what
have.
about what, like, and I kind of mean with parents who, let's like for you, for instance, you've built another level of a life for yourself that was not what you had growing up. So for you, when you have kids, are you going to kind of put them through what you went through, or are you going to provide for them what you already have? Because I noticed a lot of celebrities or just individual African American individuals, when they get money, part of them are scared that their children are going to become spoiled. So instead of giving them a little extra help that they could have used, they kind of let them struggle how they struggled.
Yeah, so fear comes from trauma. So that's where some of that is rooting
Oh,
in.
okay.
They feel like, I don't want you to be in this position. And it's not always the best ideology. Sometimes it is. But again, I think they're using what they have. So for me, my brother works with me, and, you know, he want to be an entrepreneur because I have a business, which is great because now his mind is open to that idea. But I made him work from the ground.
Right.
I do support him, you know. You know, I support him in ways he has access to knowledge, but I want to build that work ethic in him. And so as far as my kids, I'll give you a great example. Um, I will, you know, I think that again, that education and having the means needs to support along with understanding. So like, you know, we move out very young, and then we are
Mhm.
created poverty because we can't stay at home. And so like with my children, I want to make sure they have a college fund. I want to make sure they have access to support and connections and relationships in the network, but I still have to make them work, you know. So I just
Yeah.
find balance that And maybe a lot of those who you see don't do it, maybe they just don't do it because, again, their own issues, and I don't want my kids to live like I lived, or maybe they don't have that insight to say, this is how I balance supporting my child while teaching them.
Right. I like that.
Thank you,
Well,
Miss Dinisha. Is there anything that you have to tell our listeners before you go?
I just want to encourage parents to know that there's no one size fits all. We're all doing the best that we can. Just be present and think of making it. Just reflect back on how you would have wanted to see your life in order to be your best self, and try to implement those tools. Mental health right now is very much is plaguing our community, and it's much more widely spoken about. And so September is mental health, so suicide rather, suicide prevention and awareness month. And so we support that cause very strongly here at MHS. And so next Saturday, September 26th, we are going to be doing a major events around the city with 4 host sites at 9 a.m. where we'll be doing warning signs, teaching tools, personal stories, and also having fun. And then at 11 o'clock, we're going to have free lunch for everyone at Nevada Partners. We have a site specifically at Ty's Place, a safe place for teens. So I want to invite out all the teens and parents to come out. We're going to have some dynamic speakers. Like I said, some goodies, the toe tag monologues we'll be performing. And it's a way to promote awareness and prevention through having these discussions. And, I mentioned trauma and fear, and you all mentioned that. And so the more we can have these dialogues, then the more our parents can open up on some of the things that are plaguing them, which influence them to parent the way that they do, but also hear from their kids. And hopefully we can start mending some relationships and grow healthier together as a community. And that information can be found about the suicide event on our website, www.mhsbehavioralservices.com, or give us a call, 702-848-1696. And I think all of you guys are amazing.
Thank you so much. It was so nice having you today. Thank you all for tuning into this Teen Talk discussion. Be sure to follow us on Instagram at Teen Talk Vegas 881, and also check us out on teentalkvegas.com.